Um, so, so just before we get into anything, I just like you've all come along to join a session on mastering techniques for music producers, audio mastering. So, why have you done that? Why are you here? What do you want from this? What would be amazing today to
Yeah.
get to come away with?
Anyone feeling brave?
There we
There you
go.
go.
He's Louis. Louis.
I've mastered things before, but it's been a bit like the blind leading the blind, and I've just ended up with something that was acceptable, but I was guessing the entire time. So I'd like to know for certain the right procedures and what to do.
Okay.
So you want more confidence in
Mm.
your abilities and less guesswork.
I mean, I'd like some confidence and no
Yeah.
guesswork because it's all been guesswork and no confidence. So I need to swap that around.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Okay. Fantastic. We're going to help with that today. Brooke.
Mhm.
I have just mastered projects purely just
Mhm.
removing the headroom and kind of getting to an overall level
Mhm.
volume of a track and slight EQs. And I know that there's a lot more to mastering than just that. So that's kind of why I'm here today.
Mm. There can be. There doesn't have to be. I would say I've gotten tracks across my desk in the past that I've just really needed to put a limiter on and done like a fraction of a dB of EQ. Um, if the track's sounding good, you don't need to overcook it, I would say.
Okay.
But yeah, that's sometimes that's the right approach. Sometimes you need to do more.
Okay. So, I mean, I wonder what the question would be then for you. Is it what
Mm.
tools do you need and when?
Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
that be a good one to think about?
Yeah.
I have written that down.
Mm.
Miles.
See, I literally know nothing.
Okay.
I'll be
No, that's cool.
transparent. When I do installations, I don't really need to know about mixing. Oh, sorry,
Mm.
mastering.
Yeah.
So I'm literally starting from ground zero, and I'm just here to get the basics.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's perfect.
All right.
Cool.
Basics.
Mhm.
Okay. Great. Fantastic. We'll do that. Cameron.
So I've done mastering before. I've learned a bit about it at uni.
Mhm.
Uh, I mainly have practice with it with my own sort of tracks.
Mm.
I'm comfortable with getting like a balance EQ wise, but it's always like dynamics that I struggle with, like
Yeah.
getting it as loud as everyone else's track and not
Yeah.
overdoing it so that it just sounds squashed and a bit shit. So
Yeah.
finding that balance is always difficult for me.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. Fantastic. All right. This is all stuff that we can look
Mm.
at together today.
Yeah.
And yeah, just for the benefit of anyone who isn't familiar, I know most
Mhm.
of you, but not met Andy before.
Mhm.
Myself, I'm a music producer, co-writer,
Mhm.
recording and mixing engineer,
Mhm.
and I do a bit of mastering on the things
Yeah.
on some of my projects. And when I am, uh, uh, I prefer to use a mastering engineer who's
Mhm.
dedicated, like
Thank
Toby,
you.
to do the final step of the work.
Mhm.
But it's during every part of the mixing process and the sort of the tail end of producing, I'm starting to think about how the mastering is going to work at that
Mm.
point even. So like there's a point where it sort of comes into play a little bit earlier on as well. And Toby, perhaps could
Mhm.
you introduce yourself and your
Sure.
what you're doing with yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Toby Campen. I'm primarily a mastering engineer by trade. I, similar to Nick, have been a mixer in the past. I ended up sort of falling into the role of mastering engineer because a lot of my friends were better mixers and producers than me and doing some incredible work. But I was the person that was able to kind of give them an ear that they could, refer to as a safe pair of hands. And I fell more into doing mastering after that, and I've done all sorts of things. Learned to do sort of mastering for vinyl, CDs, cassettes, all that stuff. Which is often, a lot of the work I do is when bands are wanting to do an album and they need to do all the different formats and stuff. have had work, on broadcast radio and stuff like that. So I'd like to think my work's been through the tests that you need to really get your music out there. That's pretty much my background.
Yeah, and you're busy with it, and you have returning customers.
Yes, yeah.
And a business.
Thank you. Yeah,
It's fantastic.
I do.
So,
Cheers.
so we have an expert in the house, and I can tell you things about mastering, but not as much as this man can. So so this is why this is supercharged. So what we were thinking over here is we could take one of the songs that that you have contributed for this session and listen to it together and master it, kind of with Toby's guidance, and talk about the process. I think so. We've got a wonderful, quite modern production from Louis that I think we're going to use to sort of base the bulk of this session around, and then I'd like to have a little look at this metal track that Rourke has sent over later on, so we can sort of think about how we've approached this first track and sort of see, what we're now hearing when we listen to this very different track. How does that sound as a kind of rough plan for what we might do here? We're going to master a track. We're going to use exclusively plugins that are free to download. Okay, so everything that we do here, we'll give you the links to download them yourselves and install them. That's a little bit fiddly sometimes, but you can directly replicate what we're going to do here, whatever DAW you're using. Okay, so yeah. So where do you start, Toby?
I would usually start with EQ. The main, just to give you a quick overview, you can do a good master with EQ, compression, and limiting. Sometimes you need other tools to fix things, but they're the main things. So I'd always start off with EQ. Usually surgical, just to clean things up. Sometimes you might want to do a bit of tonal shaping while you're doing that. But yeah, EQ is the first place you'd start.
Okay. Right.
Shall we share the screen?
So you're thinking about EQing,
Yeah.
fixing some problems that you might be hearing, perhaps. That's the first stage. Okay. So should we listen to the track together from top to bottom? While we do it, like, we haven't heard this song very much at all. Yeah. Louis heard it a fair bit, but all of you, if you've got some paper or whatever, maybe make a note of what you might be hearing about whether you think it needs more brightness, how the dynamics might be affected, anything that you are thinking about what we would be doing. So basically the mastering process, we're taking a stereo mix down of a song. I'm going to use things like EQ, compression, limiting, just to get the very best out of it. So just think for yourself while we listen, what's occurring to you. Okay, and let's just sort of see where we are at the end of the track. Okay, so I'm just going to share from Logic here. So that should be that, and then I'll just make sure that you folks can hear it. Okay, so yes, we're going to be looking at this track here, and we'll just play it from the top. Just give us a thumbs up if you can hear it okay, and let's just have a listen.
God right now that we must pray to. I'm done living sober. You walk in the bathroom with a bag in your hand, cross necklace dangled over the sink, cross earrings scratch my neck, 5 more sips from the bottle, music so loud. safer. Where's my bottle? What's my name? Turn away from the mirror with a bag in your hand. Music so loud. Music was out of you. I want with you all. I'll see through your eyes, look through mine. We're not flying, we might be falling, but out of you. We're not flying.
Told you it was good.
Well done. Cool.
Thank you, Louis. All right. So just before we go to Toby, I'd like just to hear from a couple of you. What are you thinking about? What this is going to need? Sophie, hey.
I really like it. It's really good. It's like hazy and blurry, and I'm a big fan. I think some more dynamic contrast between the sections might do a lot. I really like the bass mix in the intro, but then when you got a big like chorus happening, some more, a gap to separate the two might make it hit harder.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. So that's sort of a creative mastering
That's
touch.
an arrangement thing. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. Thanks, Sophie. Okay. Let's have a couple more before we. What else are we thinking? Anyone hearing anything in terms of EQ or? Hey, Tom.
Yeah, so I need to caveat this by saying I have very little knowledge in terms of mastering. First of all, I just thought it was an incredible track, and I think perhaps some of the challenges in terms of what to do with it are the things that actually make it unique. To pick up on what Sophie said, it feels like this kind of really ambient, linear expression rather than a traditional structured song. So, if you do then, dip into it and change it, it could change some of the characteristics of it. So I suppose that's the challenge. But I do feel like maybe the vocals are perhaps a little bit loud and boomy in some places, and that masks some of the really interesting things that are going on in the background. So it would be interesting to be able to draw some more of that incredibly layered feel that it has.
Excellent. Great. Thanks, Tom. Cool. All right. And let's hear from Dan, and then we'll move on to doing some stuff.
Hi. Yeah, really nice track. Love the guitar parts, especially. I'm just following on from what Thomas said, really, like about the vocal. I don't have too much to add in terms of suggestions. It's more a question for mastering as a whole, because I'm also quite clueless about it. Like if you hear something about the vocals, he said something about it being boxy or something. Why are we doing that in mastering, and why not just change the vocal thing in the mixing and change it that way?
Okay.
That's my question.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Well,
Do you have an answer for that?
ideally, yeah. Ideally, you fix things in the mix. But I mean, as a mastering engineer, I often get tracks where the band wants them sent out, and you have to fix things in the master. You can do a lot more to a track than I think people think. If I've got a slightly boomy vocal, for example, I can notch out, the low mids, and sometimes that will fix the problem. It will affect other things in the mix, but if you're subtle enough with it and you nail the frequency with quite a tight EQ, you can fix a problem. But yeah, ideally you fix things in the mix. If we're talking about priorities, yeah, ideally mastering should be making a great mix amazing, and getting it ready for delivery. But that's not always the way, and depending on the environment that someone's mixed a track in, if they're mixing in a less than ideal room, for example, sometimes they've got a problem they're not even aware of, and then when I hear the mix on my speakers, I can hear, oh, this person's got too much low end in their room or something like that, and I'm having to sort of just tighten that up. But yeah, theory wise, you want to fix stuff in the mix as much as possible, but there's various reasons why that doesn't happen. Sometimes people run out of time and they just want to get the song up. But yeah, that's sort of short.
How often do you think you'll receive a song to master and then be like, actually, I think there are a couple of things you might need to sort out at your end before I can get the best out of this? Does that happen?
Yeah, I'd say sort of 10 to 20% of the time. The tools are getting better to fix things on my end. There are, there's, as you well know, you've got Ozone, there are things you can go in and change, and there are plugins you can split things out into stems and stuff if you really have to. If you're in a mad rush, I wouldn't do that most of the time. But yeah, I'd say I send things back a reasonable amount. I do prefer it if people can fix things in the mix, and if they're able to, because then, if I do an EQ move, it's not going to affect other instruments. A big one that I get a lot of problems with is like kick drums, for example. People's kicks are usually quite too loud or not punchy enough, and doing anything to that affects the bass. So, for example.
Great, cool, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you do at this point then, Toby?
So I would probably, as you've all sort of picked up, there's a little bit of sort of low mid boominess going on in the mix. So I'd probably have a little fish around with the EQ and see if I can start to pull that out a little bit. As you all sort of mentioned, the song has quite a lot of atmosphere going on in the top end. So I'd like to try and just see what we can accentuate on that, because for me, mastering is identifying what's great about a song and trying to push that a little further if we can, get that last 2-3% out of a song and really making it shine. So yeah, that'd be my first points of call. And yeah, when the song really kicks in, there was quite, prominent sort of low end stuff going on there with the kick and the bass. So I might just have a little look with the EQ and see how they're interplaying with each other, and if we can sort of get that a bit more defined. They were my sort of initial thoughts.
Lovely. Okay.
Once you get started working, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just what you're seeing here, by the way, there's a few free plugins that we've sort of selected as useful ones that we could use for this session. I've just got them on these channels here, just so we can very quickly pull them onto the track that we're using here. So we have some EQs here, we have some compressors, limiters, and some metering stuff here. So so you're gonna have a little look around the EQ with this one first?
Yeah, I think I'll pull up what I'm doing. Just to get started, I'm going to throw, this is a loudness meter. I just always like to see, the first thing I will do when I'm looking at a song is just go to the loudest point, see what we're looking at. Because I will turn the song, this is already good. I would usually turn a song up or down, just overall clip gain on the whole song, just to get it up or down to a healthy level. So we've got some headroom to work with.
So if you want to turn up the bass, you've got some space to do that.
Yeah, because I sometimes get songs that are right up to, almost zero. They're not clipping, but I need a bit of room to work with. So yeah, I'll throw Nova on here. This is a EQ plugin by TDR, which I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with. If you're not, it's a 4-band equalizer, with a high and a low pass as well. It's great for mastering. It's free. I actually use this all the time. I use the slightly nicer version with a couple more bands, but yeah, this is perfectly usable, and I know loads of mastering engineers that use this. So yeah, it's got on it. If you hit the little in button, you can see frequency of the song as well, which is incredibly useful. If you're mastering your own tracks, this is really helpful, because you've got the the frequency response there to sort of show you what you're seeing and what you're working with. So yeah, it's incredibly helpful. I'd probably jump into the part of the song here where it got a bit louder just to see what's going on. So right away I can see there, that's where the kick is. So I'm just going to sort of focus in on that. This plugin's got an amazing solo feature as well. So if you're not sure, so say you weren't 100% that that's where the kick was, you could just solo that band and fish around until you kind of hear the kick happening. So I can see there, that's where it is. I would probably, just to tighten that up, I might pull it a little bit. Yeah, so that's sounding nice. What I would actually do, and I do this quite a bit, just to sort of tame that kick, because this is quite a chilled out song. And this is a slightly more technical thing, but this is a dynamic EQ, and what that means is each band has a compressor built into it. So what this means is you can, if I lower this, you see it just pulls the kick down a bit. Yeah, you can see it's just ducking the kick a tiny bit. Now what that's going to do is it's only going to pull down the kick when it's going. Yeah, is this making sense to everyone so far? I'm not sort of running off down the road. Okay.
Just one thing. Can I just check that you are all hearing what you need to hear as well? Can you hear the music very clearly, and can you hear our voices? Is everything good? Cool. Okay, excellent, good.
Yeah. So for me, the kick drum was kind of jumping out a little bit in the mix, and this is quite a chill song. So I would maybe automate this as we go along. Again, that's a bit more of a complex thing, but yeah, a lot of when I master tracks, a lot of what I do is I will often use a bit of dynamic EQ just on the kick, just to tighten it up and make sure it's not sort of poking out, because that's one thing you hear a lot in mixes, that a lot of mixers will push their kicks and snares really hard, or not enough. Usually that's one thing I run into quite a bit. Yeah, so I'm gonna just pull that back. Yeah, that's one thing with mastering. Compared to mixing, you will do a lot of subtle moves. So you know, if I was going to EQ this kick because it's too loud, as opposed to what I'm doing now, I'd probably only pull it like 0.3 to 0.5 of a dB. You tend to only do small moves in mastering. I would say if you're pushing something more than a couple of dB, there's a problem with the mix. I mean, I do sometimes have to break that rule of thumb, but generally, if you're doing moves more than a couple of dB, you probably want to go back to the mix and fix it there.
It's also a very frustrating thing when if you've mixed something and you send your mix to a mastering engineer and it comes out sounding radically different, then sometimes the vision, the feel of it can be changed, and that's not really necessarily respected the vision that came from it.
Yeah, there's a sort of, similar to doctors, there's a bit of a sort of mantra amongst mastering engineers of do no harm to the mix. So the mix has to go back better than it was, not worse. So yeah, I'm going to see how we go with this kick drum. I'll just pop that back in. I'm going to also pull the ratio on that a little, because I don't want to over compress that kick.
I see through your eyes, look through mine. When I fight,
okay, I'm going to run back here to where the vocals sort of come in as well. I'm just going to listen. What I'm going to listen for now is usually a lot of muddiness occurs in the sort of 300 hertz area. Sometimes it's give or take a bit of that, but I'm guessing if we're going to try and clean up some of this sort of woofiness, or for use of a better word, in the vocals, that will often occur in that sort of area. So I'm just going to have a little solo and listen around here.
but I love you.
lot of this is very subtle moves. A lot of mastering as well is just turning things on and off as well. So I'm just going to jump back to here, see if it's feeling a bit.
There's people trapped in there I can't help them. You can't.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can hear that at home. Here, sort of turning that on and off, it just seemed, the mix seemed a bit sort of clearer and brighter. It's very subtle stuff, but yeah, I mean, if I pull that out, you can hear the mix gets a lot thinner. We kind of just want to do that, but on a much smaller scale. Again, if you're, this is something that's helpful to do if you're trying to find a problem. I mean, I think you've covered this in another session, Nick, of like boosting the EQ, notching it up, and then fishing around for a problem.
Yeah,
we do that.
The sort of seek and destroy method is what I call it, where I sort of boost a certain area of frequencies, move it around, and then find the thing that I hate, and then I know that I can pull that down a little bit.
Yeah, I did do that for years. I'm only making these moves because I know what I'm listening for, but that's exactly what I did for years. I would, you know, on that vocal, for example, I would have been fishing around here to find the woofiness. The seek and destroy thing is exactly the same as soloing the band. This is sort of seek and destroy, but you're only listening to what you're seeking to get rid of.
That shows you exactly what that band of EQ is going to affect, isn't it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. The only other thing I would sort of initially pick up is when we get big here. I'm just going to look at the low. Yeah, that's not so. What I was doing there, sometimes chucking a high pass on the mix. I wouldn't recommend. There's a lot of people on YouTube that tell you to do this and everything, which is absolute rubbish. You can just kill the low end doing that. Sometimes doing it, putting a high pass on the mix around sort of 12 to 15 for me, it just, if you've got bass notes that are sometimes a bit uneven, it will just lock those in. Not sure why, but it works. For me on this mix, it wasn't really working, so I'm not going to do that. But I was just listening to see if that would improve it.
There can be a lot of power to those very low frequencies as well. You might not hear it, but the waveform could be doing some pretty wild things without being able to hear it or feel it, but it'll be in there, and it'll be compromising how much volume you can get out of the mix if you leave that stuff in. I'll just say right now, we are able to see that we have sort of things happening kind of below 50 hertz, 20 hertz. Now, some of you are wearing studio headphones. We're listening through some very nice studio monitors here that go down to, like, they're really nice speakers, and they're reliable down to about 35 hertz, which is really quite low. Tom is listening on some earbuds. Now they might be the sort of the ones with like a suction cup on them that have a lot of bass. They might not have any bass at all. So it becomes, so this is where this kind of analyzer can become very important. If you don't have speakers that will tell you what's happening down there, this can show you what you can't hear.
And I can see on this mix there's quite a big roll off on the high end as well. So we might think about, I'm going to have a listen, but another thought of mine was accentuating the high end a little bit, just to see if we can bring out some of that kind of ambience in the top. But also that is, again, not to get too techie, that's something I might do with a mid side, but we can talk about that in a bit. I'm just going to see what happens. I love you. So a lot of mastering, as you saw there, I was just clicking this through. I've made this EQ band into a shelf, which essentially does huge lift. A lot of mastering engineers, myself included, when we do like tonal shaping, what that means is you're sort of massaging the overall frequency balance of the mix with very, very broad. It can be curves, or it can be a shelf like that, or a curve like that. But we'll often, if you want we'll fix. A good theory is to fix problems with quite tight curves, and accentuate the good things that you want to bring out of a mix, or something. It could be the low end you want to shelve off, but yeah, doing broad curves and like tight cues is usually the two things that we use for those two different purposes.
Right. So if you've got one frequency in a vocal which is really piercing, then you might use a very tight EQ to sort of notch that down and control that. But generally, if you're adding tonal color, if you want to add brightness, sparkle, presence, then you use a wider band.
Yes.
And that'll keep the integrity of the mix together.
Exactly, yeah. So on this mix, it seems a bit extreme, but I probably only do that about half a dB or so. I want to check. I'm going to jump to some points in the mix here just to check that, because doing this it'll make the whole mix a bit brighter, and that's pleasant. But I want to make sure I'm not accentuating anything that we don't like sibilance in vocals or harsh drums, cymbals, or anything like that. That's sounding right. Cool. So what I'm going to do quickly here at this point, if I was mastering this track on my own, I would just turn the EQ on and off and check that what I'm doing is making things better. So my initial reaction there was, I like what I've done, but I've taken a bit too much out of the low mid, so I'm just going to pull that back a little bit. So that's 0.4, which again seems tiny, but in mastering that's quite common.
I love this. It's so subtle, but I can hear the difference. Are you hearing the difference? The improvement in clarity in how you're hearing over there? Is it clear to you?
Cool. I'll turn it on and off a few more times.
Yeah, let's just have a look there.
Jump to the part where there's a bit more. Cool.
Fantastic. So really slight changes to sort of bring some air and balance and control the low end.
Yeah.
Okay, great. What are you folks thinking at the moment? Is there anything you want to ask at this point about what we're doing?
Cool. Just to reiterate, a lot of mastering is this. A lot of people will call it a dark art and things like that, but it's often, it's often just 2 or 3 small EQ moves, a bit of compression and limiting. You can throw the kitchen sink at a mix if you want to, and occasionally I will, but a lot of it is as simple as this. Especially when you're working on your own material and you're quite familiar with it. You come back a few days later and you might just want to do a couple of little EQ moves to tidy things up, pop a limiter and a compressor on it, and that's the job done.
Particularly if you're mastering your own mixes, to have some distance from having mixed it and then trying to master it can be really useful. Just to do it the next day with fresh ears is a good thing. Now I see that Rourke and Tom, you've got your hands up. I'd really like to hear from you, and then we'll maybe look at some dynamic stuff.
Yeah,
Rourke, hey.
Hi, I was actually going to ask Toby a question about dynamics. I see on that plugin you got on the right there, YLM2. Could you explain the difference between peak and RMS versus LUFS? I think it means loudness unit full scale.
Yeah, it's a different way of measuring the audio. RMS is, as you mentioned, it's the average over time. LUFS is it came from broadcast, and it's the same. It measures volume over time, but it's weighted with a frequency curve. Basically meaning they've tuned it to the human ear. It was originally invented to basically keep adverts and TV programs all the same level. It's what your streaming services and other places have moved towards using nowadays. Same with YouTube, any social media, all of that is all using LUFS because it's tuned to the human ear basically.
It's trying to give you the most relatable
Yeah,
kind of metric for how loud we perceive volume.
yeah,
So if you have a load of songs that are all like minus 14 lufs,
yeah.
then you'll perceive them to be at the kind of same kind of level.
Yeah.
Whereas they might have louder and quieter bits, but it'll be kind of
Yeah.
around about the same place.
We won't go into reading this today,
No.
but I can find some videos to send on how to read it. The main ones I'm looking at is the peak at the bottom here, and I actually use the short term most of the time, or the momentary, which is this big scale here, just to show me where it's at. I mean, I had it in the background there. I actually don't work with the loudness meter on most of the time. I try to sort of just make the song sound good. A lot of the things that you'll hear online about mastering stuff to 14 lufs for Spotify is rubbish. You should just make the song sound good and let the services turn things up and down as they please. I won't go too much. That's a whole rabbit hole that we won't go down today.
But that's juicy, Toby,
Yeah.
because like I am always looking at that meter, and
Yeah.
thinking, how loud is it? Is it loud enough?
Yeah.
And you are just trying to make this thing sound good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot of modern music needs more density than 14 LUFS to sound good. And if you're the best analogy that somebody told me a while ago was, if you mix a song to that quiet level, and this is like jazz or classical, if you're thinking like modern pop and rock, if someone's listening to a song on a Bluetooth speaker in their kitchen while they're cooking and doing other things, your song needs to be quite dense and loud to get over that background noise. And there's a reason why most pop music is louder than that, because as people, over the last 50 years, we've decided that music sounds good like that. Yeah, I won't go down that rabbit hole more. But yeah.
Thanks, Rourke. Quickly from Tom. Yeah.
Thanks, Toby.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Toby, just slightly picking up from one of the last points you were making there. I mean, do you once you're satisfied with the mastering, do you then listen to what you've created through different headphones or speakers, to that point to hear what it sounds like, or do you just trust yourself knowing that you've done it enough that objectively this should sound good across, a multitude of devices?
Yeah, I listen to headphones and speakers. I do actually do the majority of my work on speakers. That's just headphones. That's just a personal choice. I've gotten very used to, over the sort of 10 years I've been living with my headphones. I know they're sort of like listening under a microscope, and then I'll take off my headphones, listen on speakers to do a sort of sanity check. But yeah, when I started out, I would listen on, I have like a little pair of PC speakers. I'd go listen on my earbuds. I'd like go for a walk with my earbuds to like listen to the song in a sort of outside environment. Over the years, I've gotten to the point where I can make confident decisions on what I have, and I'd be happy to master a song on my headphones now and send it out. But yeah, I would say don't. A lot of people will listen to their song on a load of different devices and get quite confused. I would say check on your like studio headphones and your speakers. Maybe listen on your earbuds that you do all your casual listening on, because those places where you listen to music the most, you're going to know them really well, so you'll know straight away if something's off. But I wouldn't go listening on sort of 5+ devices, because that will just confuse you and everything sounds very different. So just I'd say find sort of 2 or 3 places that you really trust, and stick to those.
Stuff that you're really familiar with. So like, so you know what your favorite records are supposed to sound like on a certain pair of speakers or headphones. Yeah. And then you can when you listen to your master after that gives you a really good guide as to whether it's too bright, too loud, or whatever it might be. Familiarity is a big thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Shall we move along?
Yeah, I have one question. Actually.
Yeah, of course.
So, you homed in on the bass drum. You homed in on the low mid, and you to sort of bring that down a little bit, and you homed in on making some brightness there. You're working on some on my speakers, not your most familiar speakers.
No.
I can hear that you've made some great decisions here.
Thank you.
How did you know to do that? How did you know to do that, Toby, you magician?
Thank you. I've listened to a lot of contemporary music, and I've am quite familiar with this sort of type of sort of ambient music, and sort of ambient sort of poppy alternative stuff. And I think a lot of it is just listening to a lot of records. I mean, we were talking earlier about reference tracks. So a good thing to do if you're working on your own material at home is using reference tracks and comparing them. We do have some. I don't know if now's a good point.
Let's do dynamics, and then maybe
we'll do it. But the short answer to your question is just listening to a lot of music and comparing it. And I've just sort of, because I'm now just mastering, not mixing, I spend all day, every day listening to commercial releases and what music should sound like. But a lot of this is taste as well. Yeah. That my taste and how I like to hear music said is a bit too much low mid, and the kick drum needs a little bit of squeezing, basically.
So a lot of listening, and I suppose just spending a relatively high proportion of your life with an EQ in front of you.
Yeah, but a lot of it was practice.
Yeah,
it took a lot of practice and the seek and destroy and knowing.
Okay.
So that's
great. So should we have a look at some dynamics now?
Yes.
So we get this up to volume and go through that process.
Definitely. I will for this one go with the SSL compressor, because this is one that I think you'll all hopefully be fairly familiar with.
It's a pretty standard compressor.
It's quite a standard compressor.
No surprises.
Yeah, I do. Just so everyone quickly can see, we also have this one in the box, which is a Fairchild compressor, but I won't use that today because it's not most ideal for an example, but that's another common one sort of used in mastering.
So just real quick, we can focus, I think, on the left side of this. Let's not worry about the side chain or anything like that
for now.
There are reasons to use that, but I think just some really good sort of rule of thumbs of how to set ratio, threshold, and time, so we can get the effects here.
So with mastering, the best place to start is stick your attack to the slowest setting and your release to the fastest, because that's going to be very slow. In mastering, you do want to use very slow compression. It should not be, this track definitely wants a sort of warm hug of compression as opposed to like very snappy, attacky compression. Basically what I would start to do, just checking everything's where it should be, I'd probably do a 2-to-1 ratio to start with. This compressor this plugin has 1.5, but most SSL compressors actually start at 2, so we'll start there because that's the lightest setting you can normally do on an SSL.
So again, this is going to be about very, very slight changes again.
This is all very subtle. So what I would do is go to what I can see on the waveform as the biggest part of the song.
Use the loop.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll jump to the biggest part of the song and just play it through. So what I'm looking for there is basically I'm going to bring the threshold down until it starts to just twitch the needle a little bit. That's basically when you know your threshold's biting. And then I'm going to just pull up my loudness meter again, just so we're aware of how loud we're getting it. So I've increased the gain, the makeup gain quite a bit there. Is this making sense to everybody so far? Cool, because I don't want to sort of run off down the road with. Hey, Rock, you got a question?
Yeah, should the compressor be doing something all the time, even if it's just like slightly ticking?
No, it doesn't have to be. This is. I know that a lot of people will often dig in a bit more with a compressor, and you can, if you want to, you can go to up to like 4 dB of reduction. This song's quite dynamic, so I might do more than that. But no, it doesn't have, like, I definitely, when I do my masters, the needle is not moving all the time. Sometimes it's only doing like a couple of dB in the choruses. It doesn't have to. That is how you get a more dynamic master. It is not smashing something with a compressor. And we'll get to it later on, but often when I'm mastering a track, the first thing I'll actually put on is the limiter, but we're doing it in this order today so that we're going through the process. But yeah, compressor doesn't have to be doing something all the time. That again, that might be a bit of sort of misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation on YouTube. But yeah, so I've got that. I'm just going to give this another quick listen to check I'm happy with what it's doing. Just jumping to some of the quieter moments. But this is doing something a little bit in the quieter sections as well. But really, we just want this to be kind of taming things, and it should be very sort of slow compression. It's sort of very sort of, if you were driving a car down the road, it should just be like little bumps. It shouldn't be like hitting all the time. If this was like a metal or a heavy rock track, you would maybe dig in a bit more. But for this sort of song, I don't want it to be doing too much. Now, we did talk about ignoring this side of the compressor.
Uh-oh.
It's fine. One thing I would always advise you to do, if you're at home, and a lot of SSL compressors have this on, is the high pass filter in the sidechain. I would always raise that a bit, probably up to between sort of 80 and 150 hertz. Does everyone understand what that is and what it does? I'll quickly explain. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Basically, inside the compressor, there's a circuit that detects the signal. We're just telling it to ignore some of the low end, so because you basically will result in a master with a bit more low end. If you have low end that's getting a bit out of control, then by all means pull that down to zero. It goes down to 20. But yeah, I would always raise that a little bit. Differs on song to song, but this will just ease up on the low end, and it means your kick drums and stuff aren't triggering the compressor, because that can end up with like the pumping effect that you hear on a lot of badly done masters.
Okay, so the thing that's going to control the compressor, you're taking the bass out of that, so it's not going to pull it back when the kick drum happens all the time, but it's going to pull it back with a general volume of the song, and not just be bouncing along with the kick drum in this case.
Yeah, because we want the majority of the energy higher up the frequency spectrum to be triggering the compressor. Okay. Yeah.
How about should we set this up then? Just let's see how you set this up just instinctively.
Oh, sorry, I've been through that while you're in the loop.
Well,
so I just pulled down the threshold, did some makeup gain, and we've got it to yeah. So that again, you can ignore the rest of this because the rest of the sidechain is quite complex, and I won't go into that. But yeah, that was a breakthrough for me. The sidechain was one of the things that made my master sound less rubbish.
My master's got a lot better, Toby, when you gave me the option of just not using a compressor. It feels good to put a compressor on a master bus. It feels really good. It feels like you're doing something that's going to help, and it bounces and it's exciting. But since I stopped doing that, or necessarily doing that, my music sounds so much better.
Yeah, you don't have to do it all the time. It helps to get up to the commercial level, but yeah, and it can help glue things together in a nice way. But yeah, as you were saying, Rourke, doesn't have to be moving all the time. This is purely to catch a bit of the energy before we go into the limiter, basically.
Shall we look at limiters?
Yeah, we can look at limiters.
Let's so we could master this just with a bit of EQ, a bit of compression, and a limiter.
Yes.
And this could be as simple as it could be.
Make that a bit smaller. Yes. Okay. Precisely. I'll quickly move that over there. This is, by the way, before we move on to limiters, if you want a frequency analyzer quickly, Span is a very good one. This does what we were doing with TDR. I usually have this in the corner of my screen most of the time when I'm mastering. It's just a very good one. So yeah, if you aren't using TDR, use that to look at your reference tracks and your masters when you're going along. So limiters, I've got a free one here called Wave Breaker, which is I need to move that over there. It's a very good limiter for this sort of thing. Did have another one called Frontier, which we might break out on the next song. But for this basic one, this is a very good limiter. It will save your true peaks, which we sort of talked about before. I won't go into too much detail, but basically when you're looking at your meters in a DAW, that's sample peak. In recent times, like broadcast and streamers like Spotify and stuff, they have come up with a new way of reading peaks called true peak, which is basically rebuilding the signal in the analog realm. So basically, if you have like two very sharp, quick, close together samples, the actual analog waveform that comes out your speakers might go overshoot slightly between the samples. So this is basically catching levels of distortion that we weren't able to sort of catch 10, 20 years ago. This limiter is a true peak limiter, so if you use it, you'll be safe. That's all you really need to know. Other limiters don't have that in all of the time. It's mainly mastering limiters that do true peak because it takes more processing power. This limiter, it's sort of emulating a couple of famous ones, mainly the ozone limiter. It's got similar things built into it. But the main things to look at is this is your threshold, which is the sort of ceiling of your limiter. So that means nothing can go past that point. When I'm mastering, I tend to go to about 0.3. That's quite safe. It gives you a little bit of room. Some people will go right up to -1 or 0.1, sorry, or 0. Some people will tell you to go all the way down to 1.
So this is to say that your finished master is never going to be any louder than 0.3 of a decibel below the ceiling. So
yes,
with digital audio, we've got an absolute maximum kind of level of volume, and Toby's going to bring it up to just below that, just a tiny little bit of margin, just in case. Okay.
All the streaming services are going to pull it down anyway, but I take it up to there and no further, because sometimes when people, I make MP3s for my customers, but if you convert stuff to MP3 later down the line and you go right up to 0.1, sometimes you can get some distortion that's nasty. So that's why. So
rule of thumb, just have the ceiling just a little bit below the top. So half a decibel, 1 decibel kind of thing is going to be safe. Yeah. So how are you going to find the right loudness for this then? How much? So we have the drive controller is what's going to push the sound into this here.
Yeah.
How are you going to judge that?
So I will look at my loudness meter a bit. I'm going to sort of turn it up and see as well. If it starts to break up, I'm going to pull back. And then we might need, so mastering is quite a balancing act between the compressor and the limiter. So if I get it up to a good volume without having to do any more work, then that's fine. I might need to push out of the compressor into the limiter a bit more. We'll talk about that once we get it there.
Can we watch your process and then when we see where we end up, see how you've made your decisions?
Sure, yeah, of course, no problem.
I see through your eyes, look through when I'm flying, we might be falling, but I love you.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. It wasn't breaking up too much. There was some moments where it was getting 4 or 5 dB of reduction, which on certain limiters you don't want to push it too hard because it will start to break up. But yeah, I it was starting to distort a little bit. I decided to pull the compressor down a bit more, so it's squashing a bit more, push it up a bit more, because we're getting up to the level where it's going to be, you know, release ready, so to speak. This limiter does have a nice little preserve dial on it, which is, I think, stolen from the Ozone limiter. But that basically is, you can turn that off if you want, but it's basically rebuilding some of the peaks afterwards and just helping your limiter not crush the life out of your song. Okay. So that's a nice another reason to use this limiter. But yeah, great. That was sort of, I mean, a quick way. I'd probably jump back into the song and just see where we're getting in other parts.
I'm done living sober. You walk in the bathroom with a bag in your hand. Music was of you.
Yeah, we're getting quite a transparent limit there, so I'm quite happy with that.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
All right. So, Louis, this is your track. How's it sounding to you?
It's sounding, well, I mean, great, obviously. Because of you, however, that sounded like I was, because of you. I'm not trying to be that much of an arsehole.
Oh, hey, take some credit. You have made a lovely mix here, Louis.
Yeah,
thank you. But it is interesting because these are my headphones that I use when I'm just making music. But having mixed a lot of things now and listened to them on all kinds of different devices, like these are very boomy. No, sorry, they're very high end focused, very sparkly. Okay. So when I'm mixing on these, I'm boosting the mids and low end a lot to perceive them properly on here, which is where I ran into a lot of trouble when I'm playing it through speakers in untreated rooms or something, and it literally vibrates the walls sometimes. So the kick stuff is great, and just understanding how much to compress is so useful, because
you don't want to do too much.
It can kill a master, and it's been very hard, as I said before, like guessing the right amount to compress.
I mean, with a lot of time, to sort of answer your question and to sort of touch back on what you were saying as well, Rourke, I would sometimes go in and use like automation on the clip gain to push up the level. Instead of doing compression, you could grab your finished mix and boost it up in the quieter areas instead of using compression. I mean, I use Wavelab to do all my mastering, and that's basically got like a clip gain automation line in it for that sole purpose of wanting to push up the mix instead of using compression, because you're going to get a more dynamic master that way. And I'm only doing it by like half a dB to a dB at a time, but you know, with this sort of track, I could easily see myself sort of grabbing the sort of first 2/3 of the song, shuffling them up a tiny bit, because once you have the loud master, it's going to preserve the dynamics a bit more than just slamming the whole thing.
There's something about what Sophie was suggesting a little bit at the start of this about how slightly different treatments for different parts of the song could maybe enhance the dynamics as well. I understand there can be some tricks where maybe verses might be just a tiny bit quieter and maybe more narrow, and then when you get to the chorus, let it really rip, and then you get that extended kind of impact of that.
In that sort of situation, you would probably do something, you could like automate this high band to only come on in the choruses. Again, I don't want to go down too many sort of advanced paths, but I mean, we've got in our arsenal here, we've got this Bax EQ. It's a Baxandall EQ, which is like it's traditional mastering EQ. It's only got 3 bands, but they're really broad. If you wanted to do something like that in your choruses, you could switch this to mid-side, which is, I do this a lot. And then if you stick it right up into the top, some of this is like inaudible, but if you boost that up a dB or so in your choruses, that's going to open up the ambience as well.
Let's just hear this really quickly,
Yeah,
because this
cool.
is a very interesting technique. I'm just going to bring
Yeah.
this onto our channel here. So mid-side processing, we can EQ. Basically, this is going to separate anything that's mono and anything that's out on the sides, so we can treat them differently.
Yeah.
So with this one, let's say we can put a boost of some high frequencies just on the side channel and leave the middle alone. So when we sort of engage this, you'll hear it sort of just like become wider and a little bit more expansive. I need to share this again.
Sorry, I've still been able to see the screen. I was about to say, is that not sharing for anyone else?
No, we've made a mistake.
We've made a
I was
terrible.
just going to
okay.
ask.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
No,
that's just the EQ.
let's try this again. Really slick. Yeah, there we go. So there we go. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yes, this one, we're just going to boost the high frequencies just on the side channel here.
Pray to drugs, pray for a kaleidoscope. Look in the mirror, it's bad luck.
It's misbehaving, isn't it?
It is.
It is misbehaving, that.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. Off.
There's people trapped in there, I can't help them, you can't either. Here's much safer.
So this is quite extreme here, just to sort of show the difference here, but I'm just sort of adding a load of like top ends to the side channel here.
Where's my bottle? What's my name? Turn away from the mirror with a bag in your head.
That's more than you want to use, but it just sort of like expands the sound in those moments, and that can be used really sort of dynamically like that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, so I'm just looking at the time. We're sort of 8:45 right now. So, what I'm thinking is we could have a little bit of time to talk about whatever you want to about mastering, and if you want to have a little, would you be up for maybe just sort of going through the process very quickly, just without talking, on the rock track?
Yeah.
Just sort of like just slam that rock track and see how that goes.
Yeah.
At 9 o'clock, and if you want to hang around to see how that goes, just give it like a sort of 10-minute blast through that.
Sure.
Who would be interested to see that if they hung around to see that? Yeah. So like just let's have a bit of a chat, and then let's just master this other track and just see how that goes. So
sure.
Yeah. So what sort of questions are sort of coming up for you folks about this process, and what are you observing? Yeah, Rourke.
Toby, what signal chain would you recommend doing? Would you go EQ first, limiter then, or compressor, or what order would you usually do things in?
Yeah, I usually always start with an EQ. Depending on how many plugins I use, because I mean we've kept this fairly straightforward today. But yeah, I would always do EQ, compression, limiting, and then sometimes once I've made my chain, and I'm sort of not feeling like it's still totally there, I'll sometimes put another EQ in before the limiter. But yeah, that's the order I would always go in. There are obviously other things that we've not covered today that are a bit more complex, like clipping and stuff like that. But any of those other processes would go before the limiter. But that's my basic chain would be EQ, compression, limiting. That's not a hard and fast rule. I would say when you're doing your mastering, if you feel like, I don't know, putting the compressor first and it sounds better, do it that way. But yeah, that's my basic order.
Thank you.
Is that cool?
Thanks. Yeah. Hey, Miles.
Hiya. I meant to ask earlier about reference tracks. How many reference tracks would you usually use typically?
Usually like 2 or 3, depending on the song. But yeah, I'd usually hunt down something that's, a commercial release in a similar vein to the track that you're working on. When artists come to me, I usually ask them for reference tracks, and they usually give me a couple. Often it's, the idea is they want their track to sound like that. And it can be really helpful because sometimes it's, tonally very different to what they've submitted to me, so I have to like work a bit harder to get it that way. But yeah, I'd use a couple, and you'll be surprised, you know, when you pull in a track, how different songs, you know, commercial releases can be all over the place loudness wise. You know, some things are still really slammed, some things are quite dynamic. So yeah, that's a good way to look at what's going on in the world as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. Cheers.
That's okay.
Yeah, commercial. If in doubt, commercial releases will always guide you. And if there's a real knack to sort of listening to what you have, what you wanted to sort of sit in a playlist next to and think, is mine brighter, darker? Does it have more mud? Am I going to have to go back into the mix and sort this out?
Yeah.
And honestly, this takes practice, but that's the process of learning, is to put it next to references and learn how to apply those differences in brightness and so on. So
I'll share some materials with everyone after on the WhatsApp, but there's a really interesting blog that Isotope do every year, which is a sort of rundown of the top 10 tracks that year, and they just throw it through Ozone and sort of show you how loud it is and the frequency curves and everything. And most things do sit within like a fairly common sort of place frequency wise.
Cool. Thank you. Sophie.
Oh. Hello? Oh, we can't hear you.
Sophie, you're muted. Yeah.
My computer loves to break. So when you're mastering like larger projects, an album, say, how do you handle transitions between songs?
I just I usually have in my DAW, I just stagger them up and down like that. It's called like checkerboarding. I usually put like, I'll start with a couple of seconds in between. How do you mean if like two songs overlap with each other?
Yeah, like smooth fade outs between tracks on streaming.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I tend to. It's pretty. Sorry, how do you mean? Look, just sort of the shapes of fade outs or things like that.
So in the past when I've tried it, I've got like clicks, or I've just not been able to get.
Oh, like
a
seamless
seam.
transitions.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that is more to do with the streamer, because you should be able to have like two tracks, put a cut in the middle, and the streamer should handle a seamless transition like that. I have had it as well in the past where I've made a seamless transition, and when it's on Spotify, you get a little click. Sometimes it's an error with the distributor. It's a bit sort of convoluted, but in theory, you should be able to make a completely seamless transition, and the streamer should handle it, to put it bluntly.
Great, thank you.
That's okay. No problem. Feel free to drop me an email and we can talk more about that.
Okay. And would you load them all into the same session then? In all these songs with a sort of like a crossfade between them, and then chop them up afterwards?
Yeah, and then you basically, if you were working in Logic, for instance, you would just do the loop section like you would normally do and just get it bang on the transition. But yeah, that I do all my mastering in one session, especially for an album, so I can jump between tracks and check that they're all tonally in the same sort of place, loudness wise.
Fantastic.
That's okay.
Great. Hey, Andy.
Hey there. I just had a question. You mentioned that you work with cassette and vinyl mastering. Do you do separate sessions and different processes for cassette and vinyl mastering?
Yes. Again, that's quite a deep topic, but what I tend to do is I'll finish the project for digital and then I'll do a save as. Mainly it's just because of like how they need to be handled. Like vinyl has to have a different frequency balance and it can't be as loud as digital. Cassette as well has to be turned down a little bit, and also when you send those to productions, you basically do one big WAV per side for like side A and side B. But yeah, to answer your question, I try to. My job as a mastering engineer is to keep the master sounding as close as possible. But certain delivery platforms like cassette and vinyl can't have. They just can't take the sort of level that you can send to digital.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Wonderful. These are great questions. Cameron.
I was going to ask, you mentioned mentioned earlier, or maybe a couple of times, about clippers, and that was something I've been interested in sort of understanding. I'm assuming it's literally just shaving off the top of the
Yeah,
waveform rather
if
than
you
limiting it.
yeah, if you imagine a limiter, a good metaphor is compression's like punching a pillow, a limiter is like punching a brick wall, a clipper is like coming along with a chainsaw and just chopping the top of all the peaks off.
Right.
It works really well for certain songs. It's very hit and miss. There's a couple I'll when we dump all the free plugins later, I'll put some clippers in there. Just experiment with them for certain things, like really hard electronic music or metal. It works really well.
Yeah, that was something I was struggling with, because a lot of my drums tend to be quite like clicky and snappy, just because I'm
Yeah,
obviously compressing them quite a lot, and then I'm just trying to
yeah,
take the initial attack down a
yeah.
little.
With drums, it's actually quite good to use clipping in the mix. Again,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something that we could be covered in another session, but a lot of more experienced mixers I work with will clip their drums because they just don't want it to get destroyed in the mastering process. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do sometimes use clipping as well. It's just another thing that I only bring it out once in a while, but it does work well.
Where does it
Yeah.
go in the chain?
I usually put it just before my limiter at the end. Sometimes I'll put it right at the front, after my EQ. But it really depends. It depends if you've got like very, very big spiky drums. Like if I work on some like trance music that's got very, very big peaks, and yeah, I actually just want to like chop those all off before I go into my compressor so it doesn't go wild. Depends on a lot of this depends on the source material. That's a big caveat in mastering. Like, I get asked occasionally, like, what's your standard signal channel? Like, there isn't one. It really depends on the material.
It's about learning the tools, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Like all the
Yeah,
different
yeah.
EQs, they have a different feel to them. Every different song, you tune into to its needs, and you'll start to associate it with different kinds of EQs
Yeah.
and compressors that will serve it well.
Yes.
And it's experimentation to sort of figure out which of those is going to work best. There is no one right tool. Although, in a sense, an EQ is to some extent an EQ, and a compressor is to some
Yeah.
extent a compressor, and they'll all do this kind of job.
Yeah. And learning, I only have 2 or 3 of each tool that I know really well at this point. And there are new plugins coming out all the time, but I try to avoid adverts as much as possible because I just know the tools that I know well. And I could go and buy another compressor, but if I just tweak the attack and release times of the ones I have, they'll probably sound similar to what's new. Yeah.
Okay. So, and like, if you were to sort of think of like 3 like rules of thumb to approach mastering our own tracks,
Okay.
what would they be?
Yeah.
What are the like, if they're just like some simple things to take away?
Yeah.
What I'm certainly seeing is simplicity, and being
Yeah.
gentle is one thing.
Yeah, I would say obviously do no harm. Definitely, as you said, take your ear breaks. Even I take ear breaks. Like I'll master a track and then maybe go out for a short walk, I have my lunch, and then come back to it in the afternoon before I send it out to the client. So taking that time off, especially if you're mastering your own work. Don't worry too much about the luffs. I get so many emails from people asking about luffs. But just, try and make the track sound as best as it can.
Make it sound
Yeah,
good.
make it sound good. Yes, make it
Yeah.
sound good. Yeah, because people get really technical with mastering, and there are a lot of technicalities and little numbers, but it's mostly about the vibes.
Yeah. The vibes.
We were talking earlier about how do you know when a song is done. It's like usually I'm nodding my head when the song is done because it makes me feel good.
Right.
That's how you know when the song is done.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Wonderful. Okay. So, folks, we have this amazing community now, the really excellent Production Know-How Alliance. Are you all a member of this now?
Seeing lots of nods.
Seeing some nods. I'm just going to throw some links into the chat right now. For anyone who isn't in this, there is a link that you can click here where you can join the WhatsApp community that we are. There's lots of people in there helping each other, giving each other advice. There is no like when you join, there's an announcements group, and I will not spam you. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'll tell you what you can come along to. I'll keep it really sparse, but there's a few different groups you can join if you want to join different conversations about just getting production advice, giving each other feedback on your mixes. If you've got free plugins you've come across that you want to share, join these groups, and you can opt in, opt out of these. Okay, so the community is really, it's proven to be really, like I'm quite moved actually to sort of see how people are interacting in this thing and collaborating with each other. So with the WhatsApp community, you can join that. There's a link here to donate to what we're doing over here, which helps to keep us doing it. So people are donating, and it's greatly appreciated, and keeps the wheels turning a bit. There's a link to Toby's website, so you can sort of see more about what he's up to, and what it would look like if you were going to actually approach a mastering engineer to work with him. And my Instagram, which I am not doing enough with, frankly. Okay, so I'm going to post the links to all the plugins that we've used today and some more that you can download for free and use in whatever DAW you're using. I'll put them in the community WhatsApp, if that's okay with you all. So if you join that and join the free bargain production tools section, I'll pop them in there so everyone can benefit. Does that sound good to you folks? And then you can download literally everything that we've looked at today, okay? Okay. So it is 9 o'clock, and it's been wonderful to spend the time with you. If you have more questions, put them into the chat. I would love to just see what Toby does with Rourke's metal track right now. If you would like, so should we do like speed mastering, 5-10 minutes, and just go for it. Just go for it and see where we end up. I'll be fascinated to see where we end up.
Thank you for coming, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much. It means a lot. It's wonderful. So I'm just going to go into share on Logic, and we're just going to see what happens for like 10 minutes. Okay.
Let's go.
Here we go.
Cool. Can everyone see the Logic?
Okay, so this is Rourke's track. Can you all hear this? Let's go.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Hear your
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll chat away. Cool. So we want a fresh instance of Nova to start with. Oh, it's not fresh. Default. There we go. Oh, okay. Sorry, everyone. That was an anticlimactic beginning.
Just on top of that.
Thank you. Sorry. For the record, I don't use Logic as much as Nick, so this. I'm doing my best here. Again, predictably going to focus in on the kick because that's my thing. Gonna have a fish around here. So I'm making sure that I can hear the vocal properly on the. The vocal is good here, but I sometimes like to give my mids a bit of a push, especially on like rock and metal, because you want to make sure the vocal can be heard over the guitars and everything. It's all promises and lies. This is already sounding quite well balanced to me.
Great mix, this.
Yeah, it is a good mix already, so I'm not going to do too much to this. was just, I don't know if everyone can hear that. I was just getting a little bit of a sort of resonant, humpy thing in the low mids that I wanted to just notch out a tiny bit of. That might have not been audible over the string. Yeah, so those tiny EQ moves to me are just bringing the mix forward a bit in the room. Quite small moves again, but that's yeah, that's what this track needed to my ears. Oh, that's good. Right, so this song definitely wants an SSL of all the compressors that we have in our arsenal.
You just know the character of this and it's going to work for it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you. It's all promises and lies. So I don't want to crush the life out of this one. So we didn't cover the dry wet mix knob in the last track, but I'm going to give this a little bit of a pull back. So we're feeding some of the dry signal in. It's not 100% compression because this track's quite loud already. I don't want to kill it. I pulled this up because, again, this track, we want to let as much low end in as possible on this sort of song. Again, Rourke, I don't know how much thrash is a very touchy one about how much low end versus like high end you have. Is this thrash or is this more? I'll let you give me some direction as the client.
I downloaded this off a website in my lecture.
Oh right, okay, yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to put this in the sort of thrashy 80s metal thing. So I want a powerful line, but not overwhelming. Okay, I'm happy with that compression, so I'm going to move along with limiting. I'm going to give our other limiter a bit of a spin for this one. This is the Frontier limiter, which is another good freebie. This one, we were talking about clipping, this one's got a soft clipper in it, so this will give us a little bit of edge. Is everything right?
Yeah, it just wasn't.
Oh yeah, this one comes out the box with funny settings.
I was playing with it.
Ah, okay, that's fine. So this one does have a slightly different layout to our last limiter. You've got release time on here. If you're unsure, leave it in medium and try it fast to see what it does for the song. That's just how quickly it's going to recover. Very similar to a compressor. So this limiter is a lot more colourful than the other one. It's going to add a lot more edge.
It's beefy.
It's beefy, yeah. I'm going to just get this in place. I'm going to try the soft clip because something like metal really takes to clipping. It's all promises and lies. So just to catch this is not a true peak limiter. So I am going to put wave breaker afterwards, doing absolutely nothing other than catching the peaks. Because if you aren't using a true peak limiter, this is quite common in mastering to stack your limiters. If you want to use one that's got a sound to it, a lot of limiters do have a sound, and if you like it, you can use it, just use something afterwards to keep it safe. You can see that sort of tickling it a little bit. I've taken that over because I was just letting the soft clipper kind of do its thing. But yeah, this limiter will let some peaks through. So you can see it's catching a little bit, but it's just doing a tiny, tiny bit. This limiter is going to be doing the majority of the heavy lifting. Cool, I'm really happy with how this is sounding already. I might just. I'm going to go. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I killed it just before the high vocals. I'm going to have a little play. Again, this is just sort of throwing all the bells and whistles out. But to be honest, on a metal track, I would probably try some mid-side as well, just in the top ends to try and get it sounding really huge. Just checking that I've set this all back to 0. Yes, I have. This is a mid-side, so on the right-hand side, I'm just pushing out the edges a bit with a really high EQ. This is basically going to trick your ears. It's basically stereo imaging, like the sort of stereo imaging plugins that you get, but the old-fashioned way of doing that is just adding some really high EQ on the sides. Stepping out, the shadows give no hold. Now I'm messing around with the mid signal. I'm just seeing here what happens when I push the EQ with this, because this is a sort of analog passive sounding EQ. So I'm just trying to add a bit more sort of grind into the guitars. Can't pretend I'm not all alone. Don't need love. Yeah, that pushes and really adding some edge there. Yeah. So it could be if you want that in your metal.
Yeah, the guitars and the vocal are sounding kind of like harder and more upfront with that. But the width is brighter and airier from the side processing.
Yeah, cool. I do a lot of rock and metal, so I'm kind of, this is my thing. This I know, it's all promises and lies. Yeah, that's. I would probably call that done. You could fiddle with the EQ for a little bit longer if you wanted to, but yeah, that's a healthy looking curve. It's not out of control in the low end.
Toby knows what this sort of this analyzer would look like with this sort of music, so you can see that. You can also put this through, listen to reference tracks through this. I'm just going to put on Master of Puppets, which I've just slyly
nice one. Love that song.
Converted from MP3 here to MP3 from YouTube. Cheeky. And let's just see what that looks like in terms of its curve. Yeah. So is that? Oh no! There we go. There we go. Don't need love, this I know. It's all you need, dedicated to how I'm feeling, Metallica is famously pretty bright and
it's
like
very
that.
scooped.
So,
this is more of a modern sounding.
But that's
track.
how you can go about using this sort of reference.
Cool.
But fantastic. Sounds awesome.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a quick 5-minute master.
Yeah. But,
we got there.
Obviously, there'll be a bit more work to sort of finish it off, but this is a kind of the process. So,
yeah.
Toby, thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, it was awesome to see you here. Do you think there's some things that you'll be able to take forward into what you're doing with your tracks now?
Cool.
Okay, I mean, I'm just amazed just how little needs to happen to make such significant improvements here. So, if you've got ideas and thoughts, put them into the WhatsApp group and continue the conversation. If you've got tracks that if you want to practice mastering, maybe you have some mixes you can share with each other to sort of have a go at that. I would love to see what comes from that, and I'll put the links to download the stuff that we've used today into the WhatsApp so you can get stuck into those. Okay. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Next Monday, it's going to be a mix clinic. Please send me mixes. So we're going to look at one of your mixes, just going to spend an hour and a half with one of your mixes. I'm going to sort of help to shape it and solve some problems for you. So please submit your mixes as soon as you like, so we can get that ball rolling. Do you think anyone here think they might have something that they could do with a bit of assistance with? Awesome, please. Just send an MP3 in the next couple of days so we can work this out. I really look forward to that. It's been next Monday, and the Tuesday after that, we're going to be joined by Laura Donahue, a vocal coach, like a proper like A-list vocal coach, who works with people that you have heard of in Nashville. Okay, talking about vocal technique in the studio. It's going to be an amazing session. So, and that's Tuesday the 15th. So, anyway, more news as it breaks. Lovely to see you all.
Awesome.
Keep contributing, keep loving each other, and I will see you anon.
Amazing.
Bless.
Thank you.
So much, Nick. Thank you, Toby.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Nick.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Toby.
Thank you.
See you around.
Thanks so much.
Nick, Toby,
Hello.
really appreciate you checking out the track. To be fair, it was kind of last minute because Nick asked for some tracks. I've only spent like 3.5, 4 hours on the song max.
That's all right.
So there's definitely other things I'm going to check out, but the
Sure.
tips are super helpful, man.
You're
Appreciate
welcome. No, that was the mix sounded great. Honestly, that was definitely a job of making it sound better. A lot of mastering can be salvage work, so that mix did sound really good.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thanks, Rook. Thanks so much for contributing. It's great.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. See you
Right,
next
take care.
next
Thanks.
time. Bye.
Cheers.
Hi. Hey, Ruth. Oh, you're muted.
Muted.
You're muted, Ruth. Do you want to say hello?
Oh. Is that us or?
Oh, hang on. I'm gonna. You're still muted. I'm just gonna see if I can.
Oh, no. Doesn't plug mine. Hopefully this won't forget them. Oh no, what's happening?
Yes, there you
I'm
go.
running the meeting.
That's all right. That's all right. How
How
you
do I
doing?
leave the meeting? That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Great.
I can't see where to leave the meeting.
Where's leave the meeting? Oh,
Oh.
well, I can end it. I can end
Yeah.
it. Don't worry. You
I
can.
would like to leave so this doesn't happen every time. It's
Oh,
like
okay. Well, you will have to figure that out for yourself. But it's nice to have a moment
I'll
with
be
you.
here next time then, same guy the last one.
Okay.
Bye,
All right.
guys.
Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.